I never thought the richest man in Cascade County would point at me with a little smile and say, "Calm as ice, fix this, and I'll give you $100 million. I was just the woman in the blue uniform, wiping fingerprints off glass, trying to beat the parking meter and keep my head down. But that day, the lab looked like a cathedral built out of money, and the Helios core sat in the center, like a silver heart, beautiful and stubborn, dying the same way every run. 88 seconds, a shiver, a thin whine, a final click that sounded like hope closing a door. Cole Maddox owned the building and the air inside it. Early 50s, gray at the temples, shoes and watch loud, without making a sound. He didn't yell because he didn't need to when he asked a question. Even the vents seemed to listen. 6 weeks and millions in overtime. He told the half circle of engineers, "And you geniuses have nothing," the lead doctor. Victor Patel started to explain resonance and feedback and math that doesn't like people. Cole cut him off with one hand turned, found me wiping the same clean spot, and said, "What's your name?" "Rosa," I said, because my mouth moved before my thinking did. "Rosa," he repeated, tasting it like a joke. "You've heard the chatter, be honest. You have an opinion." My face burned. My brain went straight to the stack of bills on my kitchen table. I said, "Sir, I just clean." He clicked his tongue and smiled without warmth. "Then let's pretend you have the answer." The brightest minds missed, the young ones in coats snorted. Victor stared at the floor because he knew where this was headed. He lifted his chin so the whole room could hear and dropped it like a coin in a quiet church. "Fix it, and I'll give you $100 million. People actually gasped. The number is funny until it isn't then. He added the hook in my throat. "If you can't, you're fired, not just this building, the whole campus, and I'll make sure every contractor knows why. You know that feeling when the ground tilts, but you're supposed to stand still, That happened. I opened my mouth and heard paper rustling in my head. "Past due hospital copay," the voice that says my full name like a threat. All I could get out was, "I can't." "Of course," he said, bored now back to work. And from the doorway, a small voice said, "My mom can't, but I can." I would know that voice if the lights went out. June, 9 years old and stubborn. In the good way, braid trying to escape backpack. I told her to leave in the car. She stepped into all that glass and money, like it was a living room, and every head turned. Cole laughed like a bear, finding cake. First the custodian, now the kid. What is this? A talent show. June didn't even blink. "I'm not going to fix it with tricks," she said. "I'm going to listen." The air shifted just a little, enough to make room for something else. A woman I'd barely noticed pushed off a console. Neat bob travel coat eyes that made you straighten your back. "If this proceeds, I'll adjudicate Dr. Lila Chen, Department of Energy Oversight." Her voice filled the room, from the floor, up steady and fair. "No circus, an experiment documented." Cole rolled his wrist like he was dealing cards. "Fine film, it put it on the company feed. Let everyone see what innovation looks like." Then to June, like she was a new game offer, stands 100 million. If you succeed, if not, you both walk. I grabbed June's wrist and she eased free, set her hand on my sleeve, the way she's done since she was little. "It's okay, Mom. Nonno Goose taught me my grandfather, not by blood, but by love, ran a no-sign shop and could diagnose an engine with one hand on the block, and his eyes closed. Silence has a sound." He told June, "And when something's hurting, it hums funny, you hear it with your skin." He taught her with tractors and beat-up Fords, making her feel the difference between a whine and a knock, teaching her that machines tell the truth if you're quiet enough. June asked Dr. Patel for a few seconds, and no talking. He looked to Cole. Cole nodded. The helios spooled from 0 to thunder in 3 heartbeats. You feel that sound in your teeth. June didn't flinch, tilted her head like a bird catching a faraway whistle. Off, she said. At 4 seconds, Victor shut it down. Cole gave a polite golf clap. You learn a lot in 4 seconds. When it peaks, something pings, June said, pointing to the heavy cables diving into the base thin like a needle. Dr. Chen, eyes on a secondary monitor, lifted a finger. Mr. Maddox, there is a high-frequency spike at 4.3 seconds. The filters bury it, but it's real. A murmur went around like wind hitting tall grass. June palmed the casing and walked it slow, reading steel like braille. She stopped at a single coolant bolt, touched the collar, closed her eyes. Here, she said, the hurt is under this. The new alloy is strong but brittle. If you squeeze it too hard, it remembers the squeeze and sings when it gets hot. One of the young guys couldn't help himself. That's not how metallurgy works. Practice catches truth first. Cole didn't smirk. He leaned in, prove it. Victor warned about warranties and Germany and money. That buys a stamp, Cole said. Open it, soft as snow and twice as cold. The torque gun cracked the seal like a gunshot in church. The bolt rose thread by thread, gleaming, like it had never done anything wrong. The fiber scope dove the screen filled with perfect machined curves, and nothing bottom doctor, Chen said quietly. The camera panned there. It was a line so faint it might have been a hair in the light. Tooling mark, the young one said. June's voice didn't rise. A scratch has sides. This goes in. Dr. Chen flipped a thermal overlay. The screen washed cool blues and greens, except where that thread glowed orange like a coal heat memory, a wound keeping score. The room forgot how to breathe. Even I knew what we were seeing. Cole looked at me, and for once the expression wasn't victory or boredom. It was the moment you realize the ocean has a floor, and it's deeper than you believed. He turned to June like there was only one voice that mattered. How do we fix it? June stood taller on a breath. You don't make it harder, you make it kinder. Sleeve the hole with something that gives a little, so the pressure spreads. Copper or bronze, then don't crank it to the max, tight enough to hold, not so tight. It makes the crack, remember? Victor's shoulders dropped, like someone took a weight off them, a thin bushing change. The stiffness changed the mode shape. He smiled at June for the first time. Gentle torque. They worked like it was a ritual. The copper ring came back warm from the mill. The new bolt sat with a single bright bead of lube. Steady hands installed the sleeve threads, caught with a small, true sound. Victor looked to Dr. Chen, then to June. She gave him a little nod. The core woke the room, held its breath. 10 seconds. The pitch rounded 40. The greens held 80, and something in my chest unclenched for the first time in months. Slid by like a birthday you actually enjoyed. 2 minutes, 5:10, when Victor finally pressed stop. The silence felt like a warm lake, and the engineers clapped the way people clap when they've seen a magic trick, and then realize it was work, and listening all along, I cried ugly into my sleeve. June stood still, serious, like she was checking for one last whisper. Cole crossed the room through his own celebration and kneeled, so he and June were eye level. You did it, he said, amazed, like a kid. It was hurting, she said. It needed someone to listen. He stood and faced me with his voice big enough for the whole lab. Ms. Martinez, an hour ago, I made a reckless offer. I don't make promises. I don't keep. I'm honoring it. My mouth made air. He raised a hand. The money goes into a trust for June at once, and your medical balances and current treatments. We cover them fully, he asked Dr. Chen to witness, and she did with a nod that felt like a gavel. Upstairs in his office with the river laid out like a ribbon, he didn't sit behind the desk. He sat across from us and loosened his tie like a man trying on human June. "Your nonno Gus, last name Rinaldi," she said bright. He could fix anything. Cole looked out at the water and back. My grandfather flew off a carrier in the Pacific. He told me about a kid in the engine room who crawled where grown men wouldn't, and patched a fuel line with soft metal and a prayer and got them home. The records never caught his name, but my grandfather swore he owed that kid his life. He pulled a soft-edged black and white from a drawer, tapped one face, Granddad tapped another, a grease streak on a cheek like war paint. He always thought this was the kid when you said, "Rinaldi." Something clicked. You know what I mean? Some stories you don't argue with. You just hold them careful so they don't break. Weeks later, the tone inside Maddox Dynamics shifted. People didn't shrink when Cole walked by. They waved. Victor's team built a corner without computers, just benches and hand tools and stethoscopes. A place for dumb, smart questions. Cole renamed a wing the Rinaldi Center for Intuitive Diagnostics and opened the doors to kids from schools without physics labs. He moved me from janitorial to coordinator, which is fancy for giving people the right wrench at the right time. June came after school twice a week, learned that a gift is heavy and light. At the same time, we met lawyers who explained trusts like they were recipes. We signed too many papers with our names spelled right and more commas than we'd ever seen. Not everyone clapped. Reporters wanted the picture of a serious little girl beside a beautiful machine. Comments called her a prodigy, called me opportunist, called Cole a manipulator, buying absolution with zeros. The grocery line asked if power like that steals something from a child. The bus said a bushing is a coin flip that came up heads. And at night, when the house finally went quiet, I'd lie on my back and ask the ceiling the questions other people were too polite or too mean to say. Did Cole change or just perform change because it plays well on camera? Does he owe us because of a war story we can't prove, or because he humiliated a woman for sport and got called out by a 9-year-old? Is genius a blessing or a burden kids shouldn't have to carry? Here's what I know from ground level, where money is months of medicine and tires that don't tear and breathing that doesn't come with counting. A machine that died at 88 now runs past 10 because somebody small closed her eyes and listened. A man who believed in force found a use for gentleness. A girl held a stethoscope and taught a room to hear. And I, who tried to be furniture, learned to walk into a place that made me feel less and say my name like it belonged there. One afternoon, I found June sitting on the lab floor, back against the rail, palms flat to the helios like a blessing. "What are you listening for?" I asked. She smiled without opening her eyes. "Nothing," she said. "That's how I know it's okay." Cole came by with his hands in his pockets and said he used to love winning, and now he likes this better. He didn't name it, and maybe that's the point. If you were in that room, would you call his bet a stunt or a contract with teeth is paying it honor or proof you can buy almost anything? Was June exploited or elevated? And when you saw a custodian in a room full of degrees, what did you expect her to say? Tell me in the comments. Argue with me, share the time someone dismissed the wrong person and paid for it, or the time mercy and courage fixed something that looked beyond fixing. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one, and I'll be here, listening.